17 in 1970, I enter Mount Allison University in Sackville, New Brunswick. If you've ever driven to Nova Scotia, at least on the main road, you've gone right past it, just at the edge of the Tantramar marshes there. Mount A, as it's called by those who have the delight of knowing it, and yes, there's some alma mater pride on tap here. Mount A is one of the oldest universities in Canada and used to have a very clear but nonviolent initiation process for those entering first year. The last and most challenging part on the last day is taking a dirty, wet, almost disgusting journey through a winding ditch full of Tantramar marsh mud. Sophomores on either side make sure we get covered from head to toe. I even see one guy ahead of me being pulled out of the ditch and thrown back in with a huge splash of black, thick mud. It's clear, though, that these are second-year friends of his doing this to him specially. It's all safe, although alas, at some point, it's judged a health hazard, and so it hasn't been done for years. But at the end of the ditch, we're helped out of the muck. All the other frosh crawl, all of us frosh crawl under tables, between which people pour ketchup, mustard, and relish all over our heads. At the real end, we're given a tam in the color that will identify our class forever. Ours was lime green, the last humiliating act of the sophomores. But the person who puts the hat on your head also says, "Welcome to Mount A, freshman in my case. Welcome to Mount A." And I can't tell you the waves of joy, welcome, and sense of belonging that came from that. It may have been silly, but it's a peak moment of initiation in my whole life. A coming of age or initiation rite of some kind is a nearly universal process of becoming an adult. From the most ancient cultures still existing to within many cultural institutions of the most modern kind. Initiations help develop individuals into functioning members of the culture, experienced participants in society, and often mature believers in the cultural religion. Examples range from the vision quests for youth in a traditional indigenous peoples to the achievement of trade certificates or academic degrees after grueling training. Physical, mental, emotional, educational, and spiritual challenges and the suffering that accompanies them are all part of the ritual. Enduring these helps bring the individual into a deeper awareness of outer realities, such as life being hard but survivable, as well as a deeper understanding of the self, such as knowing one's strengths and fears. The intent and hope of initiation rites are that the individual, after completing them, find their secure place in the culture. In other words, greater personal security can be found on the other side of the initiation. Looking now upon what both people's and society's experiences around the world are, it's not difficult to see many challenges as having the potential power of initiation rites. We're all being initiated, whether we like it or not, and we can resist it or integrate it. Fr Richard Rohr, through his writings and podcasts, has become one of my spiritual guides. My words today both quote him and clearly follow his ideas. Rohr is a Franciscan priest. And one of the first things I learned from him is that the Franciscan view of Christianity is very different from those teachings most of us were usually exposed to, those of us who were exposed to Christianity growing up. A quick example is their perception that all of creation, all of creation reflects the divine. There's no human dominion, but a trust. We are part of the whole creation. So we might think of them in that way as interdependent web people who have seen the world through this lens for only 800 years. Rohr is a theological writer, a Roman Catholic small u universalist, from my point of view, a mystic who grounds much of his life and faith on spiritual experience, from which he offers spiritual direction and teaches spiritual practice. Rohr speaks certainly in Christian terms, but he and the Franciscans are the first to say that the terms mean something quite unlike what most Catholic, Orthodox, and Protestant traditions claim them to be. Today, it's his observations about initiations and maturity that are on the table. I'll briefly present 5 lessons that Rohr adapts from initiation rites, and then 5 consoling messages that balance those lessons. These are the first words of lesson 1. Life is hard. All great spirituality is about what we do with our pain. Creation has a pattern of wisdom, and we dare not shield ourselves from it, or we literally will lose our soul. We can obey commandments, believe doctrines, and attend church services all our lives, and still daily lose our souls if we run from the necessary cycle of loss and renewal. Death and resurrection are lived out at every level of the cosmos, but only one species thinks it can avoid it: the human species. Now, resurrection is another term that Franciscans offer as part of the life cycle, so not so difficult for us to at least hear or read. The pandemic brings with it many kinds and degrees of pain and grief. Like always, reactions to such enormous losses can be eventually nurturing or destructive. I wish I lived in one of those neighborhoods where almost everybody gets out and bangs pots every Friday to thank essential workers. Wouldn't it be great to be able to yell and make noise for a good reason? It'd get pent up energy and pain and even anger out. And yet the focus is on pain, praise, and gratitude. And then there are neighborhoods where people see plots and social control and resist taking the most obvious necessary preventive measures. And I see these people as likely refusing to accept the pain. Lesson 2 is you are not important. You being the ego, the personality, not the true essence of each of us. So I should add that Rohr's use of ego is particular, more like a combination of the raging id and the needy, immature ego. A strong, compassionate, and passionate, healthy ego is not the problem. During most of our lives, we firmly identify with our individualistic me egos until at some point, life blesses us with some form of dismantling, brick by brick, as Rohr puts it. This can be a blessing because it makes us shed superficiality and accept our inevitable participation in the human condition, from which no one is exempt. We can interpret that many frontline health workers see themselves as no more important than anyone else, and express that by being willing to take great personal risks to help others. Then there are other people who attack the best information and those who deliver it. I assume that many of them see themselves as more important, more capable than others, and that their discomforts should be relieved, no matter what the risks. The next third truth we learn is that your life is not about you, the individual. I believe that our lives have meaning. I believe we share an innate purpose to appreciate the universe through human experience. Each life is part of the grand existence of life into which we contribute and from which we receive. To live is to face some responsibility to be there for others, to be accountable. But each of us also needs to find, create, or unearth our particular purpose. Often that discovery is painful, but that is a core of the human experience. The fourth lesson is you are not in control. Now, of course, we each have some control of ourselves and lives, but as we experience and understand life more and more, the list of things we cannot control or can no longer bother trying to control gets longer. Surrendering becomes increasingly welcome. We can learn this through everything from joyful birth to sorrowful loss. Inexorably, if we accept reality, we accept the things we cannot change. During this pandemic, the majority of people in affected countries around the world have ceded large degrees of personal control to health authorities that would limit us to save lives. Those authorities struggle with the fact that the virus is beyond our control as yet, except to the degree that we can limit its spread. As we know, others refuse to give up any control, quite blind to the chaos happening around them. In each of these dichotomies, acceptance, resistance, surrender, control, and such, people aren't always choosing consciously how to respond. So much depends on what one has witnessed or been taught in life. But there is always the choice to ask oneself questions and to take a look at one's motivations and biases. The last of the 5 lessons is, of course, you are going to die. Whether by starvation, dehydration, or hallucination, most traditional initiation rites include a death-like experience that cuts through the denial of death. Experiencing a real death, an actual death within one's life, is the ultimate initiation. It can rend life apart and lead us into a tunnel, the direction of which we do not know. Even after years of grieving, the pain may be dulled but not forgotten. And besides death, among us, no doubt, are some who have had life-threatening or even near-death experiences, and others may have faced a loss that's a symbolic death. To deny death is to miss the fact that symbolic rebirth also happens and is often a life-altering, life-saving moment. By surrendering and accepting the truth of death, we become free to live. As a response to these 5 lessons about life, all of which are somewhat hard to take, Rohr also shows us 5 consoling messages. As a Franciscan, he finds these messages in Christian scripture. So I'm going to quote the lesson, the scripture, and then do kind of a UU translation that I think most of us can find understandable. So the first lesson: it is true that life is hard, and yet my yoke is easy and my burden is light. From Matthew chapter 11, verse 28. And we UUs could say, life is hard, but countless others have found joyous ways to survive. The second lesson, it is true that you are not important, and yet, do you not know that your name is written in heaven? That's Luke chapter 10, verse 20. In our terms, perhaps, you are not important, yet only you can fill your place in the universe. 3. Lesson is that it's true that your life is not about you, and yet I live now not my own life, but the life of Christ who lives in me. Galatians 2, verse 20. Now again, Rohr defines Christ not as the person of Jesus, but as the original creative principle present within the whole universe. And I had trouble with this, the whole word about Christ, until I realized his idea, the Christ principle, the creative principle, is not far different from some of our Unitarian Universalist theologies. But that's detail for another time. So I'll start this one again. It is true that your life is not about you, and yet within you burns the same spark of being that energizes all things. Now, the fourth hard truth is that you are not in control, and yet, can any of you, for all your worrying, add a single moment to your span of life? Luke 12, verse 26. And let's admit it, Luke is right on here. We can't say it any better than he did. And the last lesson, it is true that you are going to die, and yet neither death nor life can ever come between us and the love of God. Romans 8, verses 38, 39. And okay, this one is much harder. But perhaps we could say, it is true that you are going to die, and yet we create life through love and help to create new life and new love by letting go of life. In traditional terms, our sense of security is gone, or at least deeply challenged. But we never have had the security that we thought we did, or hoped, or wanted to have. Life has always, and will always, be precarious. Yet the hard lessons we learn can be what grounds us more and more deeply as we pass through the initiations that rise up before us all, individually and together. And there are consoling messages we may discover as we go. Let's each and together work to make this so.